So a little bit of space, and I'll just keep recording because I usually split it.
Right. So now when we start recording again, we'll do some introductory chatter. Maybe,
Well, I
maybe
actually didn't
some of the
stop.
same. I don't know. What?
I actually didn't stop. So if there's anything you want to say that we don't want to record it, let me know now.
No, not really. What I do want to do, um, and we don't have to do it for this second episode. Yeah, nah, this doesn't need to be included. I was going to apologize again to our audience for being too energetic, but I, we can save that for Friday.
Okay. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, like I said it then. I said it, in our recording for the Friday episode, and
Yeah.
say it again now. I'm glad that you had the energy. I'm very glad for that, and I intended on giving you more of the platform than an even
Right.
level because I talked to David already.
Right.
I,
Right.
I
Right.
wanted you to be able to share and also learn more directly what I already learned. I jumped in when he said what, when you asked what got him into it, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't know what the answer to this question is yet either. I talked to him twice. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be one of our better episodes. And I hope, as we've said then, that a lot of people listen to it, watch it wherever they're at. I mean, there's not video of us, but whatever your platform, and listen to it and watch it, listen to it, take it in a second or
And
third
figure
time.
out, and figure out what each of us can do to bring more positivity to the planet and
Yeah.
less outrage
Yeah.
because there's just a lot going on. And I am going to be so happy. I was telling Craig, our buddy Craig,
Yeah.
this morning on an email. By the way, he sent a second episode, or not episode, a second essay about toxic positivity. So he had more to say about that. I'm not sure whether I can use it in expression because I don't want to beat the topic to death. But I'm he's also sent some additional essays about other things, and he's benefiting, I think, from our conversation, and it gets
Excellent.
him started in writing responses to one thing or another, and I'm thrilled about it. And I keep encouraging him to join your live show so that he can
Yeah.
talk about some of these things he writes about. But maybe he'll reach out, maybe he never will. It doesn't matter. But he's got a great voice, just like you do, because he did some, voiceover for, I don't know, TV, radio, whatever, but
Oh,
voiceover, and
wow.
he's got a great voice too. Yeah, he's great. Great.
That's awesome.
Anyway,
You might
so
get him to do some commercials.
I'm going to be glad when this election season is over because I am, what do you say? I am overloaded with
Yeah.
outrage.
Yeah.
I just really am. And I listened to your, I listened to your podcast or your show with
Yeah.
Jessica Skelton.
Yeah.
And I found her to be really well spoken. I think she came across to me in many instances in your interview with her as a really, really rational, you know, interesting person. And she and I share the our what do you say, our belief that communication is key and that not having good communication is detrimental to relationships and just detrimental to organizations, just detrimental all over the place. And I certainly couldn't agree more with her about that. And while she talked about how the administration, I don't think she was talking necessarily about teachers, but how she was talking that she had trouble communicating with the administration as a homeschool mom, had trouble getting answers about curriculum and whatnot from the Boyertown School District
The liaison.
administration, I found it hard to believe, particularly when she talked about not getting information about curriculum. And I did when I listened to your interview the second time. I did hear her say that they sent her links and whatnot about what the curriculum was about, but not having information about the curriculum. I was talking to Bob Wood yesterday, is shocking because we spent hours writing curriculum. Yes, writing curriculum. Who do you suppose does that? We're
So,
given
okay, so let me
standards.
ask you then.
Yeah,
Let
go.
me ask you then. She
Binders.
said she
Yeah.
said that the Boyertown teachers do their own curriculum, and one of the scenarios I pointed out was not only could a particular type of social studies class, let's just say American history, be different from one elementary school or one junior high to the other, but from one teacher to the other within that same school.
And as I said
And
to you, there is curriculum that says, okay, you will teach the Civil War.
yeah,
But each teacher, given the students in their classrooms, depending on the learning styles, the personalities, the cognitive levels, each teacher, given their own particular teaching style and learning style, makes decisions about how to present that information. So
yeah.
what I heard was what was a definition of curriculum writing. Yes, there is curriculum in place. There are standards in place. This is what you will do as an eighth grade English teacher. You will teach grammar up to this point. You will
Mm,
teach persuasive writing. That's curriculum, right? But
yeah,
how to install presented persuasive writing, given the differences in my students as opposed to Jack Spleen's students,
right.
and because Jack Spleen and I were different personalities and different teachers and had different styles of relating to students and presenting materials in each of our classrooms, even though we were both teaching eighth grade, could come across differently because that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Now, who do you want? I mean, how do you suppose that happened? I mean, you know, yeah, yes, there are differences, but there is a set curriculum that we are charged to present to students. Does it come across differently in each classroom? Absolutely. Would you
Yeah.
want it any other way? Would you want it? Would you want teachers to get a binder that says you will say this on this particular day and you will assign this in this particular way on Monday, November the 7th, and on
Yeah. Right.
Tuesday, November the 8th? This is what you will say. This is how you will present the material. This is what you will assign. Hmm. And so I think what I heard in a second listen to her interview was that perhaps the definition of what curriculum writing is about was at issue. So maybe, I don't know. But then if they gave her links to what the curriculum was and she wasn't fond of looking at those links, that's not how she wanted the material to be presented to her. Maybe she wanted a more personal interview. Maybe she wanted to sit down with the teacher. Maybe she wanted to just ask questions. I can't imagine that she would not have been encouraged to meet one-on-one with her children's teachers. I just can't. I just find that
Well, that's
unbelievable.
she.
I found it
Her.
unbelievable that she said you can only meet with teachers once a semester. Now maybe things have changed since I've been there, and I haven't been
Well,
there for 18
Mike,
years.
she's
So
homeschooled though. Her child was homeschooled, so
right.
her child didn't have teachers.
Oh, right. So she would then be communicating with the supervisor for homeschool people. That's a
There
huge,
was
yeah,
a
yeah,
liaison. She said.
yeah, yeah. And oh boy, and the liaison is supposed to know what happens in every single classroom, K through 12, in all subjects. I
No.
would imagine that relying on links might be the most doable,
Yeah. No,
way
she
to get
wasn't. I don't think she
information.
was. Yeah, I don't think she was expecting that liaison to already have immediate, here you go, here it is. It's sitting right here on my desk.
Well,
But
it
I think
sounded to
she
me
was.
like that's what she was expecting.
No, okay. So no, I got more of an impression like she was expecting that liaison to have some sort of direct access to, as you said, the supervisor of the English teachers at Junior High West, or now Middle School West,
Hmm. One
or
would think
whatever,
so.
or
And
whatever elementary. Yeah,
yeah, and I can't disagree with her there. And I can't disagree with her, or I'm not surprised that, that communication from administrators is not optimal. I think that's probably a fair assessment in many
yeah.
cases. Yeah, I don't argue with that at all. What I did find, some other things that I found surprising was her comment about bathroom issues, that there is no policy in place for whether her daughter would be in the same bathroom as a boy. And there seems to be no policy, but
Is it an issue?
I'd like to sit down with her about that, because the United States Supreme Court was involved in Boyertown's bathroom policy. So yeah, there's a policy. Now,
Somebody else mentioned it too,
I'm not
and
going
you're
to pretend
actually
to know the ins and outs of it, but I do know that there is a policy, and
well, you're
that
actually going
was
to force me
troubling.
to take a note.
I went to a, I went to a school board meeting and spoke at a school board meeting very early in the whole what do you say, in the whole argument about it, and it was about locker rooms. That one student was troubled that there was a student of the opposite gender in the locker room with him, and I suggested at that time in my comments that, that back in the day when I was a high school student, I wasn't always happy showering with my gender same
Yeah,
people. Many of us fought for the shower that was private back then. And maybe it's always been an issue for young people to be embarrassed about being in the same room without clothes on. And maybe it was time to relook at that whole thing. So maybe it was
I,
time for
I,
all sorts of privacy issues to be addressed. So,
I miss those days. I've been a professional athlete. I've been a professional athlete, and technically, I've never been to the Olympics, but I've been an Olympic athlete because I've trained at the Olympic Training Center twice.
hmm.
Um, I miss showering with the guys. Just
Okay.
and that's not a gay thing. It's really not. Soap soccer. You take a bar of soap and play soccer in the big open shower space. And of course, it's slippery because all the showers are running and there's water all over the place. So, uh, and now I'm seeing more newer commercial gyms um, opening up with individual shower stalls.
Mm.
So now there's fewer showers because that space previously taken up by a shower head is now taken up by a wall.
Right.
And now there is sex happening in the locker rooms because there's spots with privacy. You
Interesting.
didn't you didn't have that 20 years ago when everybody was watching.
That's an interesting viewpoint. I had never thought about that. But I don't want to get stuck on this issue. I want to go
Yeah, it's
back to
election
her.
day.
No, no. I want to go back to some additional thoughts. I just found, and again, um, as I mentioned to you in an email, there were a lot of things about her interview and about her that reminded me of my younger self 30 or 40
Yeah.
years ago. Okay. When I really did believe that, sitting down with people one on one, just sharing thoughts, sharing feelings about what was going on would lead to better understanding and consensus building and bridge building, as David calls it. Um, but I have learned since that not everybody really wants to come to consensus. They don't want to build bridges. They want power over
Yeah.
other people. And they get and maintain power by creating fear and discord. And that, sadly, is one of the things I've learned being an older person. And so while I found her, thoughts about communication refreshing, I also, and I don't mean this necessarily in the most, any disparaging way necessarily, but I found them somewhat simple and naive. But that's because I've got some years on her, and I've been working with school board issues for 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
and I know how controversial things get, and how ugly things get, and how there are people who don't want to be friendly. They don't want to get along. They want instead to have power. And so, like I said, I found that about her. And then I also commented to you, which I found kind of funny in reflecting about her interview. I thought it's a whole lot like, you know, um, people think they know what teaching is because they've been students, and it's a whole
Oh
other
yeah.
quote unquote ball game when you're on the other side of the big desk. There's so much budget issues. There's politics involved. There's hierarchy involved. There's all kinds of administrative things involved that you don't understand, you don't know exist when you are a student. And it reminded me that it would be really foolish for the Phillies, for example, to hire me
Yeah.
as
That's a
their
great
manager.
analogy.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched a lot of games this year, and I know some of the players, their names, and some of their stats, and all that kind of thing. And I can criticize the manager for some of the decisions he's made about which pitchers to put in at what particular time and so forth. But how stupid it would it be for me, to make any kind of decisions, because I don't know I'm tiny little bit about baseball's history, about the mechanics of batting and pitching and all those kinds of things. You know, and again, I don't mean this in any disparaging way necessarily, but I thought in her interview, it reminded me of putting her in the position of a Phillies manager when she knows really so little about
Yeah.
what teaching is about, what education is about, and I mean, and not a whole lot about public school, except in, of course, being a student herself. But taking her child out to homeschool, she comes from a whole different set of expectations. She comes from a whole different set of experiences that she doesn't have as a public school teacher. She's got a lot to learn, and I don't mean that. And if she's listening to this at all, I don't mean that in any disparaging way at all. I'd love to sit down with her and just chat about some of her experiences and some of the assumptions she's made from those experiences, because I think maybe she would feel better about public school if she knew a little bit about how it works. Just
Yeah.
my 2 cents.
Yeah. No, I really liked your Phillies analogy because yeah, it's she said that she's coming in, she's an outsider looking in, and that's fine, but and she is. So I was
Hmm.
glad to see her actually admit that much. But she did keep saying about communication and an ability to communicate, and yeah, um, the thing is, as a
Hmm.
professional criminal investigator, and as somebody who knows how to
There
conduct
you
an
go.
interview and not necessarily make an interrogation, I saw a lot of signs of deception.
Did you really?
And
Did you
oh
really?
yeah, yeah.
Tell me what you saw.
Um, she was very uncomfortable talking about Moms for Liberty, and
And you picked that
and
up from her body
and
language?
yeah, and also when she mentioned the bathroom thing, it was almost like that slipped, like she
Hmm.
wasn't
Yeah.
supposed to talk about that. because it's
Right.
one of their talking points.
Hmm.
And that's what I wanted to add and mention when you had talked about it, and when we talked about the Supreme Court and me showering with other guys and all kinds of other sexy stuff. I realized in that moment, and I didn't know how to interject right away, or wanted to, wish I did, and I certainly know it after the fact. I should have, and I failed here. Um, I should have asked the question, and I have actually. You made me take notes for today's episode for show notes, which I have to. By the way, Craig, if you're listening, I do need to get caught up. Thank you for giving the permission to post your previous essay. It will be at yergz.com. But one of the things I should have asked in that moment: do we even have openly trans students in a junior or middle school, or openly trans students in our high school?
Yes,
And if we do, we do.
I believe so.
Tell me how having that strength as an adolescent
I know.
to be able to admit that in today's society
Hmm.
is a bad thing.
Hmm.
And I agree that biological boys should not be competing. And by the way, we had boys competing with girls when I was in junior high school.
You did
We did.
intramurals?
No, in PIAA athletics. If you remember, Methacton High School offered field hockey, as did Boyertown. But
Right.
Methacton High School allowed boys to play girls' field hockey because the PIAA did not offer men's field hockey.
Huh. I never knew that.
And they and they wore the skirts right along with their female teammates. I guess they called them
Really?
kilts. And instead of
Yes, they
having
do.
their underwear underneath, they had a pair of gym shorts underneath as well.
Well, yeah. I never knew that.
I yeah,
That's
I
that
I
surprises me.
watched them play at Junior High West, um, and that was in the early mid '80s.
But you just said, did you not, that you don't think guys should compete in girls' sports? Did I hear you say that?
Yeah, and I was prepared earlier this summer on Up the Middle to do an episode on. I don't have the name handy, but there was a male to female trans swimmer who was on the University of Penn swimming team, women's swimming
Hmm.
team, and they were all not about it.
Hmm.
This, as a male athlete, never did any better than fourth place. He transitions and is now identifying as a female, and is coming in first and breaking records,
Right.
and then, and this is the part that, another part that I just don't think is okay, and is certainly damning against the trans community. She would then go into the locker, and I'm identifying the male to female athlete as she, would then change in the locker room and still have all male parts,
Hmm.
and is walk. And now I'll say he, because that's what he's got there, is walking around the locker room without a towel wrapped around him
Hmm.
in front of a bunch of also naked female athletes.
Hmm.
Now you tell me, this is college.
Hmm.
How crazy can all of us be in college that perhaps
Hmm.
this guy recognized he's not going to do anything better than fourth place on his Division One swimming team? Fuck it, I'm gonna see some pussy,
But do you? I
and
mean,
this
you
is
had
what I got
talked
to do
about
to
this,
do it.
but you had talked about this before. You know, why would anybody want to be more different?
Yeah,
mean, why would a young man want to say, "Okay, I am now a female and transgender," with all the bias and and you know discrimination and stigma that's attached to that? Why would one do that, even to win a swimming competition?
Right. So
Seriously?
I have I agree, and I have a feeling on that as well. When Barack Obama ran for president, he was not for gay marriage.
Right.
Yet it was his administration that helped implement it on a national level.
Yep.
Why? In his words, he evolved because our country did too.
Mhm.
Now, were there plenty of people back in 2008 ready for gay marriage and some in their mind already married? Plenty.
Mhm.
Um, I think our nation is at a level where there are plenty of people in the trans community ready to be trans and still mainstream.
Mhm.
But as a society, like we were with gay marriage in 2008,
Mhm.
the overall society does not know how to welcome that community to a mainstream level. And so, as rude as it sounds, the trans community was something like taking part in mainstream sports based on that particular sex. They're just going to have to wait their turn. We're not there yet.
No, I agree, and I agree with you.
And I know all the
I,
catty queens that are.
I am there has to be a different solution for me. I'm uncomfortable with Gail Frontheiser. Sorry.
Oh,
I'm
shout out to Gail.
uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable with that switch also having trans um, folks play males play in women's sports. It doesn't seem right to me. And I don't know what the solution is. I really don't. Anyway, I
Well,
don't
I
want to
mean,
get stuck on that. We were talking about Jessica's interview, and you were talking about how she dissembled, and you found nonverbal communication evidence that she was not being transparent. Did you want to continue with that at all?
um, this will air Tuesday, so the Monday episode handled that, rather extensively. Um, but yeah, I can recap from that. I've got information where she said in the interview that she does not endorse or does not want to be endorsed by 1776. She never said that specifically about Moms for Liberty. And
Mm-hmm.
if she did, I don't recall specifically, and because we record this before I actually did that Monday episode, I will go back and watch the entire thing and find out where she made the blanket statement. I know she said that she's not a part of any political action committee. She at least went that far. Maybe she didn't mention Moms for Liberty specifically, but she did say that she's not a part of any political action committee. I've got a Moms for Liberty flyer with her name on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's older because of when I received it from a source than the amount of time I even knew about 1776 project.
Or Mom's Liberty. Yeah.
No, I knew about Moms for Liberty for a while, but I
Oh, you
had
did.
this mailer with her name on it from Moms for Liberty for months. And I sat on it on Friday because, like our interview with Donna Savage, but she was so nice,
Mm-hmm.
as was Jessica.
Yes.
We've talked on the
Yes.
phone at least once, possibly twice, since
Yes.
Friday's interview. And her family actually suffered a loss this weekend. Her mother in law passed away suddenly. Um, so, without question, my condolences to the entire Skelton family. Um, but she very directly and animately denied association with 1776.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't she just say that specifically about Moms for Liberty?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't she tell me the Moms for Liberty story? How her name got to Moms for Liberty? It's got to be a similar process. And I looked at there's a spot on their website where you can identify to them as a candidate, as a political candidate seeking endorsement. And by the way, you can also reach out to 1776 without telling them your political views.
Hmm. And without
So I've
providing
got to,
endorsement. Yeah.
at a minimum, her interview on Friday was deceptive. And that's coming from a professional spy hunter.
And you will have invited her for an additional interview?
She had to decline because of the death in her family,
Okay. All right. I wasn't sure
which
you
I
had heard
totally
from her yet.
understand. She's
Okay.
going to write a response to it. Um, Again, as of this recording, it's still Sunday. Uh, by Monday's episode, she will write a response to it. Um, I will put that on wherever possible, wherever she authorizes, whether it's only in the comments or a link to it from to her Facebook page, or as an attachment in the show notes for that particular episode. But because I am not just both sides now here, but up the middle, and a fair and balanced bias and presentation, and that's again why I don't endorse any one candidate or any group of candidates.
Mhm.
My other question to her was, I have photos of her in the Boyertown Halloween parade.
Oh, you do? Did she have her own
Now,
float?
no. So somebody who's self financed and independently financed and self funded was on somebody else's float in the parade. And she can come back and say, well, it was all Republicans. She did make it clear that she's a Republican. And by the way, I still have not found the spot where I called her a Democrat, but I'll keep looking. And that's irrelevant because if I do find it, I will have misspoken. I never meant to say that. I meant to say if we do find it, if anything, an independent, because that's how she identified, um,
Hmm.
at least
Yes.
financially. And
Yes.
that's my point. My 2 points here. If you're on somebody else's Republican float, you are not self funded. You are accepting funding because somebody paid for that gas.
Hmm.
And if it's your truck and if making you self funded, then you are still associating with another political action committee, other members of the Republican Party.
And somebody mentioned to me about her interview that there are, let me get to the point. There are differences in political action groups. There are nationally
Mhm.
funded political action groups like Moms for Liberty in 1776, and then there are more local ones like Boyertown Forward that are political action groups just to be able to raise funds, I guess, or it has to do with funding. But there's a difference in political action groups,
Yeah.
and ones that have endorsed her or that she participates with are nationally funded far right
Oh, yeah.
extremist groups. Am I right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Moms for Liberty is a hate group. And that's one of the things I noticed too. When I said that and when I called them fascist, she cringes. She's biting her tongue, quite possibly literally.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's because she disagrees but can't say it.
right, 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 right,
And
right.
um,
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how, pardon me, how Tuesday, you know, turns out. Um, but I think, and you have offered your services through Yergz.com to continue some dialogue about school boards and about
absolutely.
issues in the Boyertown area. And, and I ahead of time want to thank you for your
Thank you.
willingness to continue helping to educate our citizenry here in this area about different issues. And I hope that no matter what happens on Tuesday, that we continue this dialogue to forward try to forward intelligent civil conversation about things that matter to our community, to our students, to their families, and so forth. I thank you so much for your willingness to do that. I just
Yep.
love I just love the involvement. I love that we have these conversations. Thank you ahead of time.
My pleasure. Yep. It's everybody's assignment listening to this, and you and me included, is to continue to forward share without forcing down somebody's throat. And I think Boyertown Forward is a little forward. I think they're a little less like the National Forward campaign, the Forward Party. Um, I think they are a little combative, and
Mhm.
it's not going to be welcoming. David,
Mhm.
to go back to our episode for Friday, David is right. We need to bring over you guys, all of you
Bridge
listening.
building.
Yeah,
Yep.
need to bring over people from the other side. I'm up the middle. I'm independent. I'm we
And
with me saying we, I mean we need to bring people that are actually going to stay extremist, but consider the other extremes, and
mhm.
especially that silent majority in the middle,
Yeah, and
because they're not silent.
I can't disagree with you. Like you had mentioned to me that Donna and I are too close to the issue, and you are absolutely right about that. Because I have been in the schools, and to have people say things that are not my experience, that does trigger outrage, I suppose. I'm so popular. Anyway, it
Yeah, shout out to Pat.
does trigger outrage because I know better. And to have somebody say what is not true, it's sometimes difficult to maintain one's equanimity. Plus, as I said before, it's so easy for people to assume they know what happens in any profession, not just teaching, but in
Yeah,
any profession when you haven't been in there. And the other thing is that, as I said to you in this episode previously, I've been politically working with some of the same opposition for decades,
yeah,
working politically on some of these issues for decades. And so to say that I'm too close to it, absolutely.
yeah,
But to add to that I am beyond frustrated is also true. And therefore, yes, Boyertown Forward and people like me are a bit more combative than probably is smart. And so there needs to be new blood in there that, maybe has different ideas, can think out of the box, doesn't have some of the baggage from dealing with these very same people for decades. So I'm eager for the election to be over so that I can crawl back into my safe spaces and talk about other things with you, perhaps. And I'll leave the politics to Donna and her gang from Boyertown Forward. I'm looking forward to Tuesday, looking forward to Wednesday.
yeah, yeah. And that's I guess that's another episode that I'm going to be uh having to deal with, is when I finally get to publish the results and discuss them. And but back to my assessment, just so we can wrap that up with completely before we run out of time, which we've done already, of course. Um,
Always.
she's going to come back. I suspect she's going to come back with but I'm a Republican, and I was just in the parade with other Republicans.
Mhm.
So is Brad Updegrove.
Mhm.
Brad Updegrove is a registered and primarily more of a Republican. And it's my understanding, we didn't get into this further, but I think when we interviewed Donna, she may have said it, or when I interviewed her off camera. Brad and Matt, among others, were registered as Democrats because they lost the Republican primary. But those Republicans that won, kind of sort of knowing they would win, did not cross register.
Mhm.
And so now they're still able to run as a Democrat, even though they're Republicans.
Right.
So if you're so like minded, if you're so willing to reach across the aisle, why
Mhm.
did you not do it at the Halloween parade
Mhm.
and ride with other Republicans?
Mhm.
Well, because they were from Boyertown forward. But the
Mhm.
Republicans that you rode with are with Moms for Liberty.
Mhm.
And here's the mailer that
Mhm.
shows it. And oh, by the
Right.
way, you're on it too.
And by the way,
And you
very
never
good.
mentioned that. You never mentioned that when you talked about 1776. How did they get your particular information to put you on their mailer without your authority that's equally as precise as that on 1776's, who you did reach out to, I'll say, unnecessarily?
And she said had to request endorsement in order to get them to speak to her, which you did not find to be the case.
Correct. Yeah, and she said, and says to that she has the email. Okay, great. You have the email that you sent to 1776. How'd you get an email address, and why didn't you use that in the first place?
Mhm.
And if that's because they replied to your request, okay, you could have used the simple contact page too. You did not have to give them your full campaign, your platform. And that just solidifies what I said. And while you were talking a moment ago, I actually pulled up my YouTube channel. The Moms for Liberty episode is now up to 65. It was in the 40s last week. And my Moms for Liberty episode, which is a suggestion at the conclusion of all of these school board videos, it pops up at the very end for you to suggest, here, watch this one while you're here. Moms for Liberty is now at um, 65 views with 2 new comments that weren't there before and 6 likes that weren't there before. And there must be a dislike because the percentage is only at 85.7%. So somebody doesn't agree with my assessment. But one of the things I said in that video is that organizations like Moms for Liberty, Proud Boys, 1776, Sons of Liberty, which is a group today named after the group from 1776,
Mhm.
our nation's first domestic terrorist organization,
Mhm.
even though they were for us,
Mhm.
still call it what it is. They were a terrorist group.
Mhm.
Um, they all operate in a clandestine fashion.
Mhm.
At this level, particularly because there's so much division and there's so little accurate information, accurate sources of information, trustworthy sources of information being shared, they don't want to be associated with Moms for Liberty because they're the bad guys in social media, when in all actuality, they're card carrying members. And that is what I suspect Jessica to be.
Well, it will be interesting over the next couple of days and certainly in future conversations to see exactly how all this pans out. Okay?
Yes, it is. And we will
Anyway,
talk to
I
you
would
all.
suspect we are over time.
Yeah, it's a good time, good spot to wrap.
And so I'm Jane Stahl.
And I'm Yergz. I want to thank everybody that's joined us as guests on both sides now, up the middle. Yergz tonight, wherever, you're even sitting in a bar somewhere. Keep talking, and we'll see you
Okay.
all again. All right. Thank you, my dear. Another fun week.
Yeah.